I woke up to a loud slap against my front door, the kind of sound a delivery driver makes when they're in a hurry. But when I opened the door, there wasn't a package. Instead, a neon orange warning sticker screamed in capital letters. Final notice. Consent confirmed. Action required. The words punched the air out of me. Consent? To what? I hadn't agreed to anything. No email, no call, no meeting. Just this. 2 hours later, our HOA president, Karen, the self-appointed sheriff of suburbia, marched into my driveway like she owned the concrete under my shoes. She had a clipboard tucked under her arm and that tight-lipped smile she used whenever she was about to ruin someone's day. "You need to stop delaying and sign the compliance form," she announced. "We're moving forward with the upgrades." "What upgrades?" I asked. She whipped the clipboard around and jabbed a finger at my name, except the signature under it wasn't actually mine. I stared at the curls and loops I'd never make in a million years. My handwriting tilts left. This one spun right like it was trying to dance. "I didn't sign this," I said quietly. Karen clicked her tongue like I was a child arguing about bedtime. "It's in your file. You agreed weeks ago. Don't start." She spun on her heel and marched off, satisfied like she'd just issued a parking ticket. I stood frozen, the fake signature burning into my eyes like a neon lie. The letter taped under the sticker said our whole street supposedly approved an aesthetic modernization package. New shrubs, new paint, surveillance poles, and a bill that could choke a rhinoceros. Thousands each. My stomach twisted. First, I checked with Mr. Diaz, the quiet neighbor who watered his lawn like it was a sacred ritual. He leaned closer, voice barely above a whisper. "She told me we all signed." "I didn't." His eyes darted around. "Be careful. They don't like questions." Next was Maya, across the cul-de-sac. She looked terrified just opening her door. "I didn't sign either," she said quickly. "But I don't want trouble. They can make things hard." Something was incredibly wrong. That night, I went to the HOA meeting, a room that smelled like stale coffee and power trips. When they reached open comments, I stood up and calmly asked to see the original consent forms. Karen smiled like a cat who'd seen the mouse walk into the trap. "Those documents are confidential," she chimed. The board nodded so aggressively they looked like dashboard bobbleheads. "I believe some signatures may not be authentic," I said. The room shifted. A few people sucked in a breath. Karen's eyebrow twitched. "Those are serious accusations," she said sweetly. "Borderline defamation." Fines began showing up the next morning. $45 for tree irregularity. $75 for inconsistent grass coloration. $60 for property disharmony. It felt like a joke written by someone who didn't understand humor. But instead of breaking, something inside me steadied. If one signature was forged, maybe others were. And if she thought she could intimidate everyone into silence, she picked the wrong neighbor. I opened my laptop. I brewed tea. I read the bylaws like they were a survival manual. And then I formed a plan. A plan that would flip the whole HOA upside down. What I discovered next didn't just prove the signatures were fake, it exposed a secret Karen never expected anyone to see. Ready for part 2? Once the fines started falling like confetti at a rigged parade, I knew Karen was trying to bury me under paperwork before I could dig any deeper. Good. Let her think I was overwhelmed. Meanwhile, I quietly began my counterattack. First, I needed proof, not suspicions, not vague doubts, something undeniable. I started with the orange notice taped to my door. Using my phone's macro lens attachment, I snapped a crystal-clear photo of the so-called signature they claimed was mine. Up close, you could see every unnatural swoop, every exaggerated curl. Whoever forged it had tried too hard to make it look casual. Ironically, the overconfidence made it sloppy. Next, I pulled out an old birthday card I'd written for my cousin. My real handwriting leaned left, stayed neat, and never used the dramatic loops the fake one had. Side by side, the differences weren't just obvious, they were embarrassing. But one person's mismatched signature wasn't enough. I needed a pattern. So I messaged a few trusted neighbors privately. "Hey. Weird question. do you still have that HOA consent notice? I think mine got mixed up with junk mail. Mind sending me a pic? To my surprise, 4 people responded within the hour. That alone said something. They were confused, too. When the copies came in, I spread them on my dining table like I was studying ancient runes. And instantly, one thing practically shouted at me. The letter A. The same exact swooped A appeared in 3 different people's signatures, people who didn't even know one another. Not similar, identical. Same pressure, same angle, even the same microscopic pen skip near the top of the loop. Then came the kicker, the dates. All 10 consent agreements were marked with the same timestamp. Tuesday, 10:14 a.m. Not 10:13 this time, a deliberate change I created in this rewrite to keep it fresh. 10 households, 10 signatures, all supposedly signed in the same exact minute? Come on. Even a middle schooler forging hall passes could have done better. It became clear, someone wasn't collecting signatures. Someone was mass-producing them. I bought a cheap binder and started assembling everything. Real signatures on the right side, alleged consents on the left. I highlighted identical strokes, traced matching pressure marks, and noted repeat smudges that appeared on multiple pages like fingerprints of a guilty marker. Every page made Karen's lie more visible. But I wasn't done. According to our state's HOA transparency law, members are allowed to inspect original documents, not photocopies, not scanned PDFs, but the actual ink-on-paper originals. HOA boards hate this rule, but they can't ignore it. So I filed a formal records request. Printed it. Signed it. Mailed it certified. Karen tried to stall, of course. First she claimed the documents were in storage. Then she said the board was reorganizing the archive. Then she simply stopped responding. Fine. If she wouldn't hand over information voluntarily, I'd force her hand. There was one more angle I needed to check, the camera poles. They were the priciest part of the proposed upgrade. But new electrical installations required permits. And knowing Karen, asking for permission wasn't her strongest trait. I scheduled a visit from the county inspector. He walked around the property, checked the holes, and frowned. These poles don't have a permit attached, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Meaning someone's installing things they're not legally allowed to install. He slapped a bright red tag on the site. A stop sign in paper form. Suddenly, this wasn't just about forged signatures. It was about illegal construction, fraud, and an HOA president who thought she couldn't be caught. And I wasn't done exposing her. Not by a long shot. What I uncovered next didn't just corner Karen, it turned the entire neighborhood against her. Want part 3? The day after the red tag went up, my street felt different, like the air itself was holding its breath. People kept stepping out of their houses under the excuse of checking their mail, but their eyes kept drifting to the scarlet notice flapping on the stake like a warning flag. Karen, meanwhile, pretended nothing was wrong. She strutted down the block with her morning thermos, chin high, acting like the inspection was a minor inconvenience. But her pace was faster than usual, and she kept glancing at the tag like it was threatening to bite. My binder was nearly finished now. Every comparison, every highlight, every note, organized in a way that even the board's most loyal member couldn't ignore. But I needed one final push, the audience. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for Friday evening. And for the first time in months, it was packed. Not your usual handful of retirees and bored couples. This time, it was everyone. Neighbors I hadn't seen since move-in year were squeezed shoulder to shoulder. Phones out. Cameras ready. You could feel the tension like static. I didn't sit down when I arrived. Instead, I stood at the back, binder tucked under my arm, waiting. Karen walked in 10 minutes late, wearing a suit jacket that looked like it belonged in a 90s courtroom drama. Her smile was stretched too wide, the kind of smile someone wears when they're afraid the mask might slip. "Good evening, neighbors," she began with fake warmth. "Let's keep tonight orderly. We have a full agenda." Someone in the back snorted. Another whispered, "Wonder what time she forged our signatures." The murmurs rippled across the room. Karen's jaw tightened. When the meeting reached open comments, I stepped forward. Every eye in the room followed me, even the board members who normally stayed half asleep. I'd like to address the consent forms, I said calmly. Karen's nostrils flared like she smelled smoke. I placed the binder on the podium and opened it. Gasps spread like a wave. These signatures, I said, flipping through the pages, were supposedly gathered from 10 homeowners on the same Tuesday, at exactly 10:14 a.m. A few neighbors laughed in disbelief. And these, I continued, pointing to the real signatures on the right side, are samples provided by the homeowners themselves. Their actual writing. I held up a comparison page, the infamous looping A, identical across multiple signatures. You could hear people whispering before I even said a word. Whoever signed these didn't just forge one name, I said. They copied entire strokes across households. Same loops. Same pressure patterns. Same smudges. I turned another page. And the HOA president has refused, multiple times, to provide the original documents for inspection, which is required by state law. Karen slammed her palm on the table. This is baseless, she barked. You're spreading dramatics and lies. I slid out the final sheet. The county inspector has already issued a stopwork tag for illegal construction. No permits. And yet, we were all told we consented to pay thousands for these so-called upgrades. Silence. Karen's face drained of color. A small muscle in her cheek twitched. Then I spoke the words she didn't expect. I forwarded all of this to the district attorney's office. They're reviewing potential fraud. The room didn't explode, it erupted. People stood, glare sharp, voices rising. For the first time, neighbors who had been quiet for years found their anger. Karen froze. She tried to speak again, but her voice cracked like thin glass. Then, before anyone could blink, a man in a charcoal suit slipped into the room and leaned toward the board, whispering something. 2 uniformed deputies followed him. Phones shot up instantly. And just like that, the room shifted. The board. The neighbors. The entire atmosphere. Everything was about to break open. The deputies weren't just there to ask questions. They found something that shocked everyone, even me. Ready for part 4? The 2 deputies didn't storm in like on TV. They entered quietly, professionally, which somehow made the tension even sharper. Their uniforms seemed to pull every eye in the room. Karen, who had been mid-rant about false accusations, froze mid-sentence. The color drained from her face so fast it was like someone pulled a plug. The man in the charcoal suit, clearly an investigator, not a board member, approached the podium and spoke calmly. We received a report concerning possible fraudulent documents related to HOA actions, he said. He didn't raise his voice, but the room hung on every syllable. We need to speak to the board. Immediately. Karen let out a shaky laugh that didn't match anything in the room. This is unnecessary, she insisted. A simple misunderstanding. Our records are perfectly. The deputy held up a hand. Ma'am, we'll determine that. The property manager, a guy who usually acted like a decorative plant, reluctantly bent down and pulled out a cardboard box from behind the table. It was labeled in black marker, Consent Files. Everyone leaned in. The investigator lifted the lid and stopped. The box was empty. Not misplaced. Not mixed in with other folders. Completely empty. A ripple of disbelief tore through the room. Karen darted forward. That's not the right box. Someone must have. This isn't. The deputy looked at her like he could see straight through the excuses. Ma'am, he said slowly, are you stating these records were deliberately removed? I'm saying, she stuttered, searching for footing she no longer had. Someone tampered with them. The irony hit the whole room at the same time. A neighbor whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. Now she cares about tampering. Laughter mixed with outrage. I stepped back, letting the officers do their work, but the investigator motioned me forward. Is this the binder you referenced in your report? I handed it over. Everything's in order, side-by-side comparisons, timestamps, copies from neighbors who gave permission. He flipped through it. His eyebrows rose. You've done more documentation than half the cases I work with. A murmur of approval spread behind me. Karen, on the other hand, was unraveling by the minute. Sweat collected at her hairline. Her blazer, the one she wore like armor, suddenly looked too tight. "That binder proves nothing," she snapped. "Neighbors forget signing things all the time. I simply helped." "Helped?" Mr. Diaz shouted from the back. "You called my wife 3 times in one day demanding a late signature fee for a signature we never gave." Karen flinched. That isn't. Maya stood next. "You told me I approved the paint changes. I never even saw a form until yesterday." "And me," someone else added. "And us," another shouted. Voices rose from every corner of the room, people pointing, accusing, recounting things they'd stayed silent about for months. The structure Karen depended on, fear, fines, intimidation, was collapsing in real time. The deputies exchanged a look. "Ma'am," one said, "we'll need you to step aside and answer some questions outside." Karen blinked fast, like she could reverse the moment through sheer denial. She tried to laugh again, but her voice broke. No, this is all being blown out of proportion. I was just trying to keep the neighborhood consistent. People get busy, so I made things efficient." "Forgery isn't efficiency," the investigator replied flatly. The room erupted into shock and murmurs as the deputies gently guided her toward the exit. She didn't fight. She didn't argue. She just wilted, as though the last thread holding her together snapped. And when she stepped outside, the cheers began. Neighbors clapped. Some cried. Someone in the back yelled, "About time!" It wasn't victory yet, but it was the first breath of real justice. What happened next would push the entire HOA to its breaking point. The fallout didn't end with Karen being escorted out. The investigation uncovered something else hiding in the HOA files. Something none of us expected. Ready for the final part? Here is Fire Part 5, 500 to 600 words. The final rewritten chapter with original pacing, new details, and a strong conclusion. The days after the meeting felt unreal. Word spread fast, faster than any rumor this neighborhood had ever passed around. People who normally waved from a distance now stopped me at the mailbox, asked questions, thanked me, shared their own stories of quiet finds and quiet fears. It was as if the whole street had woken up from a long, uncomfortable dream. Karen's interrogation didn't end that night. The deputies spoke to half the neighborhood over the next week. The investigator requested emails, meeting notes, and archived HOA documents, and what they found made even my binder look tame. For starters, the consent forms weren't just forged. The digital timestamps on the scanned versions in the HOA computer system showed they had all been uploaded within the same 30-second window. Not collected. Not signed. Just manufactured. The county also discovered that the contractor for the aesthetic upgrades wasn't a licensed company at all. It was a side business run by Karen's cousin. The camera poles and new shrubs? All marked up thousands of dollars above cost. The whole scheme suddenly snapped into focus. Fake signatures, false consent, force upgrades, funnel money toward family. It wasn't just fraud. It was premeditated greed. The district attorney's office officially opened a case within a week. Karen avoided jail time, barely, but she pled no contest to multiple misdemeanors, including falsifying HOA documents. She was removed permanently from the board, barred from holding any position in any HOA again, and ordered to complete community service. For the irony gods, it was perfect. They assigned her to roadside cleanup duty. The first morning I drove past and saw her in a neon vest, picking trash out of the ditch, I almost felt a shred of pity. She didn't look powerful or intimidating or smug. She looked like someone who finally realized the rules applied to her too. Almost felt bad. Almost. Meanwhile, the board underwent a transformation. 3 members resigned immediately, claiming ignorance, though no one believed them. A temporary committee was formed, filled with neighbors who actually cared about fairness instead of power. One of their first acts, reverse every fine issued in the past year. Every ridiculous charge. Every petty violation. Every bogus fee. Gone. Then came the vote, the real vote, for whether we even wanted the upgrades. The ballots were simple, straightforward, and most importantly, notarized. And the results? A landslide, no. No to the overpriced shrubs. No to the gray paint mandate. No to the spy-like camera poles. No to the nonsense that had poisoned our street. Life slowly returned to normal, but better than before. People came out of their houses more. Kids rode bikes and chalked the sidewalks without someone photographing the pavement like it was a crime scene. Maya's daughter even set up a lemonade stand with a sign she painted herself, uneven letters, bright colors, dripping marker ink. It was the most beautiful sign our street had ever seen. The orange sticker that once clung to my door was long gone. In its place, I hung a small metal plaque that read, "Neighborhood, not a dictatorship." Every time I watered my front garden, the garden I was once told to rip out, Mr. Diaz waved from across the street. 1014 forever, he called, referencing the infamous timestamp. We laughed every time. Peace didn't come with fireworks. It came quietly, like a long overdue exhale. It came in the form of neighbors who finally felt safe enough to be neighbors again. And when I finally posted the story online, people asked the same question over and over. Did Karen get what she deserved? I guess justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives wearing a neon vest, picking up trash on the side of the road.